So, in this video I want to go through 5 tips or 5 things, 5 mistakes that typically beginners may make when starting out in photography, but by no means are any of us immune to it, believe me. The thing with these 5 tips is they're not specifically photographic errors or mistakes. Actually, you may not even consider them to be mistakes. Under certain circumstances they won't be. But they're more kind of process things that will certainly impact your photography if you're looking to improve your photography. You'll also find in some cases if you're guilty of committing one error, you're probably committing another one, or possibly others as well on top of that, and potentially at the same time as well. Now these things are in no particular order, so there's no one thing that's going to make more of a difference than others as such. They're all part and parcel of the same process of learning. So we'll just start with the first one, which we'll call it just snapping. For decades we've been calling our photographs snaps, and I imagine, not that I'm sure, but I imagine that comes from the clicking sound of a mechanical shutter. And whilst we're not particularly interested in the history of the word, I think what we're more interested in is the association it has with just taking a photograph for the sake of taking a photograph. Perhaps you're recording a memory of your family on holiday, or maybe you just want to get a quick capture of one of the birds on the posts out there. The intonation of the word, to me, and indeed I suspect to many photographers, is more, it's an image that is taken in the moment. It's probably not composed, it's the action of just raising the camera to your eye, or more often than not the screen in front of your face, getting your subject in frame and pressing the button. Now if we do that, and we do that a lot, if we get a good photo, we're probably lucky rather than taking a photo in considered situations. You really want to take a photograph for the right reason, because unless we consider our actions before pressing the shutter, we are probably not going to improve. One of the ways of avoiding snapping all the time is to use one of these. It doesn't have to be a great one. There's a review up here of a very low cost carbon fibre one if you're interested in that. The point being that what these do is they make you slow down, because you have to assemble them. You have to get them into some kind of order in order to use them. Especially the travel ones, which I'm filming on now, which is the review that I mentioned, because there's a lot of folding going on. It just forces you to stop. It forces you to think and consider what it is that you're doing. And that's very, very important. So where I am here, we've got these old sea defences. Some beautiful colour at the bottom here, and we've got the sea kind of lapping in the background here. And I thought just the colour in itself here was very nice, because we've got this gorgeous brown at the bottom with this barnacle covered steel at the top, and the contrast between those. But it's not just that, it's the shape of how that rust is kind of away, and you've got what appears to be darker areas there where the barnacles are kind of just leaching dampness down. It's very, very nice. In actual fact, I think getting a close-up of that would be very nice on its own. But what I saw was the view with this in the foreground and that in the background, and that's very nice. And I thought, well, the way of making that really nice is to obviously use a tripod, and we've got movement in the background, so why don't we really think about this and slow down the shutter so that we smooth out the water in the background there. So that's what I'm going to do. And of course I'm not just slowing down by using a tripod, but I'm adding these filters to the camera as well, so I slow down the shutter so I can smooth that water out. All of these things add to the process and slow me down. The composition here is important, so I'm trying to get this steel girder that's at the bottom centre of your screen in shot. See what happens to the polarizer. Probably not a lot, but oh, something. Yeah, because we have reflections, so we'll work on that. The 6-second exposure. Now, one of the problems I have with working on the sand here is that things are sinking, so I have to be very careful and just really hope with me as I try and shoot this. Now I'm going to wait until a wave comes further up and until it recedes. That's not a bad one. Let's wait for another. The reason I'm doing that is because I can guarantee I will get movement up here rather than shoot many different shots and just hope. So we'll just wait, and I've put this on a 2-second timer, so I've got to time the wave coming in as well, which is probably not the best thing. I really should put on a there's a good one, quick, get that, and now it's going to recede back. Yes, I really should put on a cable release for this, so I don't have to wait for the timer. We'll come on to that in a moment. I'm hoping that's come out, and if it has, great, you'll see it in a moment. And it's a considered shot, you know. It's not a snap, and I think there's going to be quite a difference between it and just turning up here and going click. So point one, or mistake one. Strike a pose is something you may well say to somebody that you're taking a photo of, but it's equally important to the photographer, because if your pose, if your stance isn't right, you're liable to move, you're liable to wobble, and just those micro movements when you take the photograph can mean the difference between a really sharp image and a really soft, juddery, kind of blurry image. So a lot of what we do these days is kind of out here. We hold our phones and everything out here so we can look at the screens. It doesn't help you. It may help you kind of frame up. It may have become the norm, but perhaps it shouldn't be. I'm getting a little wet here as the sea comes in. You want to tuck yourself right in, something like that. Get yourself as small as possible. Make sure your feet are grounded. Make sure that everything is as kind of tucked in as it possibly can be. If you're out here, you're just creating a wobble machine. You know, you can't possibly hold those arms square and stable for that long. And also make sure that you've turned your 2-second timer off, because that's one of the things that really gets me an awful lot. I forget to turn the 2-second timer off. And of course, I'm standing there thinking, well, why isn't it taking the picture? Oh, and yeah, it just makes things awkward. Well, I'm not standing there like that, obviously, because I've told you not to. I'm standing there like that, and it's awkward. You get my point. Another thing that you may well regret doing, therefore we'll call it a mistake, shall we, is being a bit trigger happy. Now, back in the day when we had film and we were limited in 35mm to 24 shots on a roll or 36, every time you pressed that shutter there was a real true cost, because that was a frame gone. What if that was a bad photo? That could be just money wasted. Okay, learning experience, but just money wasted. In today's digital age, we press the shutter button, we take a picture, we fill an incredibly inexpensive memory card with kind of a few bytes of data, or even a few megabytes of data, even if it's a gigabyte of data. Yeah, 128 megabyte card will give you 128 photos. Go back to when we had 36 and there's a real difference. You know, you're maybe paying a tiny bit in charging your batteries. Okay, maybe more than the tiny bit, since we've been fleeced over a barrel, if you like, in this country for the cost of electricity. Yeah, thanks government. All of these things considered, it costs you virtually nothing to press that shutter button. So why shouldn't you? Because if you run off hundreds and hundreds of photos of much the same thing, how long do you think it's going to take you to sift through hundreds and hundreds of photos to find the right one? Let me tell you now, it's a damn long time. The chances of you finding that perfect shot first go are slim as anything. In actual fact, even if you do, you won't know it's the perfect shot because there's another 100 to look through. And that takes time. Not only does it take time, it's mind-numbingly dull. All of the nuances of that shot are in the detail. And unless you're zoomed in at 100%, you're not going to see them. So then you've got to go through and zoom in at 100% to see whether it's perfectly sharp in this place, or to see whether it's got acceptable highlights and shadows, and it's not too dark and it's not too bright, and all of this stuff, it takes time. Which is why getting the shot right here in camera, maybe with 1 to 5 variations perhaps, however many you think you need, it's why it's getting it right now is important. It's not the cost of running off hundreds of them, it's the time that it will take you and the loss of enjoyment to a degree. I hate going through multiple photos of much the same thing. Now, it's fair to say that if you're shooting fast moving stuff, you know, perhaps it's a wildlife shoot or a sports shoot or anything like that, then yes, of course, it's quite important that you get all of these variations. And let's face it, there's a real chance that lots of your shots are going to be absolute dross because you might not have the full footballer in frame, or you might just miss that moment, or you might just have it on a really fast shutter refresh, so it's banging off 16 shots a second or something, and just one of those is going to be right. Yep, great. There are times when banging the shutter and just rolling it is important, but most of the time it isn't. And let's face it, if you're shooting in that environment anyway, you know about that. Just try to avoid as much as you can just rolling that shutter. So the shot I've got here is another long exposure. It's as slow as you can like. It was about 16 seconds. I've got a 10-stop filter on the front, and I'm just shooting the sea with these old sea defences down here. Nice 3 or 4 shots I've taken of it here. Yeah, considered slow, bit of enjoyment.
I don't often shoot minimalist shots, but I do like it. I just don't often find the right subject, but this worked well, I think. But I did shoot it straight as well, and that's coming up just now. Let me know which one you prefer.
The next 2 mistakes are inexplicably linked, and I'm guilty of both, horribly guilty of both. We'll start with FOMO, which is the fear of missing out, which you must be familiar with somewhere or another, because it's one of the biggest motivators in marketing and sales. It makes you make mistakes because the fear of missing out almost invariably means that you rush. Now, rushing is a problem for us all, because when we rush, we make mistakes we don't necessarily consider the consequences of our actions as fully as we might. And it creates all kinds of problems. In last week's video, towards the end of the day, similarly as we are now, I needed to change the lens of the camera. And yeah, we had fading light. Is that going to stay there? Yeah, it is. We had fading light, and I needed to change from the macro that I'd just been using, which is a 60mm, to the lens that I've got on it right now. And so I just reached into my bag and pulled a lens out and put it on, and wasted a whole heap of time putting on the big 40-150 telephoto, which was just utter madness. Is because I wasn't thinking properly. I was just rushing, and actually the shot was crap as well. And I don't just mean poor, I mean everything in its execution was appalling. I didn't show it to you, and I'm not going to either. But it made me miss out. The fear of missing out made me miss out. Get your head around that. And that rush last week was a problem because I kind of knew that I wasn't going to be taking any more macro shots the moment I finished taking the last one, because light was fading. So I really should have changed the lens way back then, but I didn't. What I was doing was saving myself the time for changing the lens at the point that I had the time. It's crazy, or rather, no, it's lazy. Being lazy creates its own problems, and you know that you're going to have to do it at some point, so just get on and do it. I had a similar problem again in last week's video. Please go and take a look, where what I was trying to do was zoom with my feet through the bracken and spiky undergrowth of a woodland rather than putting a longer lens on. Again, total madness. It was being lazy. I ended up wasting a whole load of time trying to get into a space that I couldn't get into, and yeah, it would have been so much faster to change the lens, but I didn't. Just idiocy, absolute idiocy. So anyway, there you go. There's 5 simple kind of human mistakes that will absolutely screw your photography up. Just don't make them, says the man that makes them all the time. So yeah, don't do as I do, do as I say. It's all wrong, isn't it? Absolutely all wrong. I think the fact is, we all know that we have these, I guess to a degree, relatively common human traits, and we've lived with them for years, and we still don't do anything about it. What does that say about us? I mean, Jesus, we must be learning something. But we don't seem to learn the things that we know. We don't implement them often enough, and yeah, we absolutely should. I hope you've enjoyed the pictures here. There's a couple more coming, and yeah, tune in again next week. I normally give you a thumbs up, but if I do that right now, my camera's going to fall over. So take care. See ya.
This first extra shot you may recognise as being similar to the first shot from the video. It is the same subject, so I just shot it again off camera because I thought it might look better without the interference from the other rusty part. Let me know what you think. Another shot similar to one that you've already seen, processing quite different, slightly different angle. I rather like this too. Quite a lot of the Norfolk coast is beginning to be reclaimed by the sea, and this is no exception. This is the big fissure that opened in the cliff a couple of years ago. Sadly, the village of Haysborough, and you see it spelt rather differently, is vanishing before our very eyes. We don't know how long this iconic lighthouse will be there. It's probably only 300 yards from the edge now.